As the old saying goes, there are two certainties in life. Number one, death. And number two, taxes. We can't help you with death, but we've got you covered with taxes. This is Ask the Tax Attorney. As you know, the federal government doesn't play when it comes to owning taxes, but too many people freak out about it. So if you're a business owner and you're in trouble, or you're afraid you might be in trouble with the IRS, this is the show for you. Your host is a tax attorney with over 20 years of experience, and she's helped clients erase over $4 million in tax debt. So let's get to it. This is the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. And now your host, Claudia Moncarz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. My name is Esteban Baez, and together with Claudia Moncarz, we're going to be discussing the topic, what to do if you're a business owner that owes taxes to the IRS. Hi, Claudia. How are you?
Good, and you? Hi, Esteban.
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to get into this topic because I know this is going to help a lot of people, especially around this time. We're actually recording this like pre-tax deadlines, right? So
Yeah.
I'm excited to get into it. So what should a business owner do, Claudia, if they owe money to the IRS?
Well, the first thing that they need to make sure to do is that they should file their tax returns. A lot of people, when they see that they owe money to the IRS, they decide that they're not going to file a tax return and pretend if the debt is not debt. But they should go ahead and file a tax return even if they cannot make any payments, for one important reason. When you don't file your tax return, you have penalties that start accumulating, and you have two penalties. One, for not filing your tax return on time or asking for an extension of filing that on time, and two, for not paying. So at the very least, you're still going to have penalties that are going to start accumulating for not paying, but you won't get those penalties for not filing on time. And a lot of times the penalties can increase the amount by quite a lot, by up to 1/3. So you might as well try not to get as many penalties as you can.
Wow. So the very first thing you should do then is to file, even if you... So here's the overwhelming feeling, right? You're a business owner, you haven't filed, or you know you owe money. What's the first step? Because it can be very overwhelming. Right, Claudia? Like, you're telling them now, go ahead and file, but they're thinking, man, I already owe money to the IRS. Whatever penalties, they're just going to keep racking it up. But you're saying, don't do that. Offset it, or, you want to create an offset by filing. That way you don't create more debt, right?
Correct. And a lot of things is, I think you have to, and I have a framework that I use, which I call the free framework. And the first step in that is forgiveness, because a lot of times you just need to forgive yourself, forget the IRS for charging you taxes, forget the fact they have to forgive that you, because we all, as business owners, it's hard running a business. It's not an easy task. And we have so many things to juggle, so many things to do that we may not do them all well. That's part of the learning curve of being a business owner. So you just need to forgive yourself for making this mistake, that you didn't plan for this big amount of taxes that you owe. Or maybe you kind of knew that you were going to get there, but you didn't save the money. Whatever the reason, it happens to all of us. So you just have to, step one is forgive yourself. I think that's the first step in doing that. And then step two is what I call Step two is what I call the review. You need to review all your documents. You need to review where you are. And if you already have a tax return that's done, then you review how much you owe and see where you are in the process. And then step three is to evaluate what your options are, because there's always options that if you can't pay, like we talked about, you file your return, even if you cannot pay. That's option one. But there's other things that then you can do to figure out, what can we do so that if I can't pay in full, what are my other options? Because you have plenty. You have payment plans, you have offers, you have a lot of things to do. And then the last one is to engage, which actually take some action and do something toward it. So the mere fact that you're going to file your tax return, even if you cannot pay in full, that's taking some action.
That's powerful. That's a really awesome framework. I like the first step in the framework, which is to forgive yourself. I can identify with that as an entrepreneur, that we are very hard on ourselves and we do juggle a lot of
Yeah.
things at once. So if you got yourself into a situation where you owe money or owe taxes, forgive yourself. It's in the past, but then review your situation. I really like that. You have to review your situation, right? Evaluate the situation. And I think in the evaluating process, because I've read, a couple of articles about this framework that you've written, you really want to know the exact number, right? Like how much you owe the IRS.
Correct. Yeah, because I think that also gives you clarity when you have exactly how much you owe, by when you have to pay it, and because you have as a taxpayer, you have a lot of rights. So if you know where you are in the process, you can really come up with a strategy and a game plan. And all that is to have clarity. And I think that's why you need the first one is forgiveness. Because if you don't forgive yourself, you're full of shame and guilt and anxiety. And that doesn't let you actually take action steps. And the only way you're going to be able to have clarity is when you start looking at those numbers, start looking at what happened and what you owe. That's why I always say forgiveness first.
That's amazing. I mean, anxiety and guilt and shame, these things are definitely, they steal our dreams. They say anxiety steals your dreams. So, because you're focusing on the wrong thing. So if you can remove your focus from all of that, then you can do the next step in your framework, which is to engage and take action, to actually figure out a plan and just take action. That's amazing. So Claudia, in closing, what would you say to someone that's watching right now or listening to this podcast? What would be, in closing this episode, what are like maybe some words of wisdom or advice that you can say to them?
Well, like you said, the first, if you still have not filed your return, definitely file it, because to avoid some penalties, and then really go to that framework, because step one is, like I said, is the most important, is forgiveness, because you really have to just forgive yourself. And once you do that, then you can walk through the process of doing all that.
That's powerful. Claudia, I do want to say one more thing. I know that you're not just a tax specialist, right? I believe that you identify yourself as an advocate, right? A taxpayer advocate. Like, you really, really look out for your customers and your clients. Like, you've helped a lot of people resolve this issue, right?
Correct. Because our view or that we see it in our firm, we really want to advocate for you. It's just not trying to get you to solve this problem for one time. We really want to get you to a place where you permanently resolve your IRS problems. And the way we do it, we see ourselves as advocate, because sometimes the process gets hard, because it's when you're trying to get to a resolution of this, it is a hard process, because think of it like kind of like when you apply for a mortgage. It's a long process, a lot of documents you have to provide. And if you're doing it on your own, it is really hard. It is hard to deal with the IRS. So we're here to advocate for you, not only with the IRS, but with you too. So we make sure that you keep you in the timeline. So that's why we are not just tax specialists that we can help you with it, but we really use all our knowledge of how the IRS maze works to get you to a permanent solution. And that's why we're advocate for you with the IRS and with yourself, because sometimes you can also be your own roadblock.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I really think that's very powerful, that you advocate for people and that you also make sure that people don't put themselves in this situation again in the future. I think that's key. And I know you've helped a lot of people do that. So if you really enjoyed this message today and this episode, please remember to like it, subscribe it, and share it with someone that you know might be struggling with the IRS.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. And if they're in tax trouble, they will too. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.